Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on the meditationpodcast.org. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. You find the links in the podcast description. I'm also a podcasting coach because I've got 5 podcasts, 4 being in the top 0.5%, with 1 being in the 1.5%. And you'll find everything on bio.link/podcaster. Today, my guest, looking forward to this. He's, well, as far as I know, 2 times author with very good ratings. He's a fellow podcaster. I always liked that. Please welcome Yogi Aaron.
Thank you so much for having me here, Roy.
No problem. So I suppose, I've mentioned a little bit about you, but you might let the listeners know who's Aaron.
That's a loaded question. I have, it depends on which part of me you're asking about. I am a yoga teacher, and I've been teaching yoga for about 30 years, intertwined with a few other careers. And in 2000, I moved to New York City and opened up a yoga studio. And there I met my business partner. And we opened up a yoga retreat center in Costa Rica, which is where I'm located right now. And so that's what I do in a nutshell. Who I am is a trailblazer and truth seeker, and someone who's fascinated with helping other people to thrive and live their life purpose.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I've watched a few different things, and I know that your kind of story regarding your health probably got you into this, because I had what's called a trapped nerve. I've a different journey, but I'd like to, you might just kind of tell people that story, please.
About my pain story. Well, I started doing yoga when I was about 18 years old. And when I was 18, it was the first time I really hurt my back. And, at that time, and for many, many, many decades after that, I thought, well, pain is associated to tight muscles. And in order to deal with tight muscles, I have to stretch. So that was really the initial reason why I got into yoga, was to stretch and to, move my body and develop, more health through that. And I quickly or over time, just my body got worse and worse and worse. And I started developing searing neck pain. I developed lower back pain. I developed knee pain. Hips went out, and it all sort of culminated about 5 years ago when I ended up in a surgeon's office who said to me, you're going to need spinal fusion. And what a blow to my ego, because, in my mind, I have a Mediterranean body, which I don't, but in my mind, I do. But I am a very active person. I love spending time with my dogs. I love hiking in the mountains. I've always been a very active person. And when I ended up in the surgeon's office, actually, I could barely move. And it was like that for a good part of like 4 months. There was 4 months when I could barely move. And that was like an eye-opening moment, because, so many people say, well, you should work on your alignment. You should do this. You should do that. You should think more positively. And I did all of those things, but I was in a lot of pain. And what I didn't realize at the time was that the yoga was causing the pain, but then also exacerbating it. Not the yoga, I should really restate that and say the stretching. The stretching was the culprit. And so that's kind of what led me to creating this new path of yoga, which I'm calling AYAMA, which really embraces many different philosophies. But the primary one is stop stretching, start activating, and work on becoming more stable in your life.
For me, I was in my early 20s when I got, they kind of say trapped nerve, and I was trying everything: faith healer, physical healer, acupuncture, chiropractor, the whole lot. But I remember being with a physio, and there was 2 of them, and they laid me on the table, and one held one leg down and the other yanked it up. And I know that I was a lot worse after that. So that is a stretch in itself. So, And on the other side as well, kind of going forward with this, is I got the epidural, and I was going insane. I mean, you know it yourself. You have a pain, and it's like, what's causing this? And then
Yeah.
I was told get the operation. I wasn't fusing, but it was like they were telling me that the disc is protruding and to cut the disc. And it still didn't work, even after the operation. And it was a book
Yeah.
that actually helped me, Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And a load of people, because some people get it on the shoulders as well, because sometimes
Yes.
without even realizing it, it could be stress. I think it was stress from work because I was running big projects. And I think without kind of even realizing it, that was the main issue. But there's a lot of people that I know that have been healed from that. But definitely what you're saying, the stretching, without a doubt, I think exasperated what was going on with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a few things to comment on, but in our culture today, where we're at, and I say this without prejudice or judgment, but where we're sort of at is like the two solutions seem to be, if you have pain, let's poke and prod it, or like dig into it, or stretch it. And on the other side is to take a pill for it, which doesn't solve the problem. And so, as I've been digging into studying what I know now, one of the tenets is that pain is a check engine light in the body, in the engine of the body. And so if you're driving your car and the check engine light goes on, you're like, oh,
You
self,
start
I need
panicking.
to bring, I need to bring my car to the mechanic. But we don't do that. We don't bring our cars into the mechanic. So muscle pain is always a symptom of inflammation, which is always a symptom of muscles not working properly. And so muscles move bones and muscles hold the joints together. If the muscles are not contracting properly, are not shortening properly, then they're not holding the joints of the body correctly. And so when we have pain in a joint, like you mentioned earlier, shoulder pain, it's because the muscles there aren't supporting that joint properly to be able to do their job. And so when we stretch, like you mentioned earlier about them, yanking your leg up, I mean, that's like one of the worst things to do, because what they're trying to do is to elongate the hamstring, but the hamstring is not what's responsible for the movement of the leg coming up. What's responsible for bringing the leg up is the hip flexors. So when you push the leg up, as you were talking about, to stretch the hamstrings, what you're actually doing is forcing all of the hip flexors to contract beyond what they're capable of contracting in a passive state, passive meaning somebody else is doing it to you. And that leaves you more debilitated because the brain doesn't even know, okay, what muscles do I need to use to bring this leg up? The body loses the ability to contract, or the muscles lose the ability to contract properly. So what we try and do is get in there and help the body to improve muscular function. That's it in a nutshell.
And because, like, with yoga as well, because granted, there are some people they do years of study, but there's
Yes.
others that do 3 week course or a weekend course, and then they're your yoga teacher, which it could be like my physiotherapist and do more harm than good.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I start off my teacher trainings. I lead teacher trainings, and which is where I teach this kind of applied yoga anatomy and muscle activation practice. But what I always start off by saying is that you guys are licensed to teach people how to move safely and teach people how to breathe. That's our lane. And this idea of us putting hands on people and pushing them deeper into poses, there's no history, there's no tradition of that. The Brahmin yoga teachers never touched students. They gave very clear and specific instructions on what to do with meditation techniques and breathing and moving consciousness and this sort of thing, but there was no manual on touching students. And so this is actually a very new concept that is, I think, kind of been infected by sort of this kind of Western idea of what yoga should be. And then also this fascination with stretching. I actually always say that stretching and flexibility kind of hijacked the yoga world, because everybody, if you ask people like, what do you think yoga is about? They always say flexibility. Well, why do you want to become more flexible? Because I want to look younger and I want to be healthier. And I just find that really fascinating. And so what I'm trying to do is flip the script and say, well, if you want to be younger and healthier, get the muscles working better, and then you're going to also live a pain-free life.
And is there poses that's kind of common in yoga that you believe people shouldn't be doing?
Poses, the number one pose in yoga that I think is like the worst yoga pose to use is child's pose, which is the number one yoga pose that's being
So
taught
that's the
out
one
there.
that you kind of tuck into yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that
kind of
doesn't
like
feel comfortable for me actually when I do it. And it's just kind of because of you see so many people doing it, you think it's good. But I kind of listen to my body with anything I'm doing, and it's like it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reasons why it's not good. But I mean, let's just start with the glutes. You're passively stretching all of the glute muscles, and the glute muscles are what's responsible for stability. If I can get a person's glutes strong, and then I put them into child's pose, 20 seconds, 20 seconds. I come back and I test their glutes. I test how strong their glutes are. Their glutes are actually worse than before when I first tested them. So I always tell people, don't do child's pose. I know it feels good for a lot of people, not everybody, but it feels wonderful, and stretching feels great. I mean, I love bringing my arm up. I'm not going to do it, of course, but I'm going to bring my hand up and push my arm back. I mean, a stretch feels delicious, but drinking a bottle of wine also feels delicious. So it's just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
And I started Pilates
Mhm.
recently because I started doing a back exercise. I basically decided I wanted to get, I could see myself kind of putting on a few pounds over the last couple of years. So I joined the gym, something I've never done. And you can do all these classes. So I was doing a back kind of one, which is good because they're using a ball, nothing heavy, nothing. But then I decided, oh, I've heard a lot about Pilates. That wasn't as good. Like it was like, it felt like I don't know. It felt like I felt worse after it, like the next
Mm,
day and everything. And it's like that shouldn't really happen. You should like when I do the other one, I feel a lot better afterwards and the
yes.
next day. And I just is this kind of Pilates? It's kind of similar, I suppose. It's like an extension to yoga.
No,
No.
Pilates, no, not at all. Pilates came out, I think it was, don't quote me, but I want to say around the 50s or 60s. I'm probably wrong. But what I can tell you is that Joseph Pilates was a dancer, and he started to realize like how much dancers were injuring their bodies. And I'll tell you exactly why that is, because all these dancers were moving into ranges of motion where they had no strength. So if you think about a typical like dancer stretch, they'll grab their leg, they grab their foot and bring their foot up to their head. But what is actually doing that movement is the arm. The arm is grabbing the foot and bringing the leg up above their head. But if you ask the dancer to do that on their own, they can't do that. Or if the foot is up here, they have no strength, they have no stability there. The muscles are not engaging properly. So they have flexibility without stability. And anytime you have flexibility without stability, you always lead to injury. And Joseph Pilates, I think his name is Joseph Pilates, realized that and developed the Pilates method to actually get dancers' muscles working properly. I will also just say I don't know a lot about Pilates beyond that. I've taken it like you about 3 or 4 Pilates classes. I did not feel better. So I have a few sneaking suspicions as to why. I think a lot of Pilates teachers in my humble opinion, have moved away from what Joseph Pilates was trying to teach and moved it more towards like, okay, let's just push the body. And that's probably why you felt bad afterwards. It's like exercise is great, exercise is good, moving the body is good, but to what degree? If your body's tolerance level is down and you're dealing with injuries in your back and your shoulders, and then you come and you start doing all of these very aggressive movements or repeated movements, you actually can end up causing more, as you said earlier, stress. And stress always leads to inflammation, always. So the question then is, how do we start to move the body in a way where we're giving the body not more stress, but we're actually encouraging more of a healing process?
Excellent, excellent. And I'd love to know your meditation journey, because I've seen some of your meditations where you're on a beautiful beach with your lovely dog. So you might just tell me how your journey has progressed.
Well, to be honest with you, I hated meditation. I was a person in my teens, especially, who could barely sit still. I discovered the power of creative visualization and started to try to start doing that. And I realized at a very early age that my mind was my greatest asset. So even though my meditation wasn't part of my journey, I was all about creative visualization and affirmations, which I did very religiously. And I really, attribute that to to laying the seeds for who I became today. In my 20s, I became actually very anti-meditation, partly because I couldn't sit still, and partly because I was young and dumb and didn't really understand life at that time. But what happened was, Roy, that I actually ended up meeting my meditation or my yoga teacher, whose name is Rod Stryker. And I signed up for a training with him. I was about 28 or 29 at the time. I signed up with a training with him, and he was teaching Tantra yoga. And in the description, I saw meditation, and I was like, oh, Lord, here we go. I'm going to have to face this one way or another. And the first few days was rough because Rod liked to meditate in his classes, but I slowly got into it more and more and more. And there was kind of two things that sort of happened simultaneously at that moment. Well, three. One was meeting Rod. Two, I was really injured. I had actually torn my hamstring a little bit. And it was causing a lot of pain, which actually led to a sciatic pain, which led to a cascade of other issues. So I had to really question, like, what is my yoga practice really about? What is yoga really about? And that was one of the times, that was the moment when I started to move from yoga being just, like, let's push the hell out of our body, to, okay, let's really use this practice to harness the full power of my mind. And then the third thing that happened was I got Rod's meditation uh, um, compilation, and one of them is a meditation on there to really start to become the witness to life, to learn to develop that like witness consciousness without being reactive. And so for example, one of the techniques, which is still a technique I teach religiously today, one of many techniques, but one of them was just listening to sound. Listen to sound without thought or judgment. Like you're just like an audio recorder that is just picking up these sounds and just noticing them, but without reacting to them, without having a thought again, or an opinion or a judgment about it. All sounds. And that, I was a very reactive kind of person. I grew up in a household where everybody reacted like all the time and attacking each other. And that meditation practice started me on this whole other track in my life where I could actually just start to step back and look at things without like being inside them and having that experience, but having more of a peripheral experience. Sometimes we hear this expression of like, we have to learn to see our problems from 40,000 feet up as opposed to being in them. And I felt like that's what meditation did for me. And then as the years progressed, I really got into meditation during the pandemic. By the time the pandemic came around, I sort of lost track of my meditation practice and, just busyness in life. And that was just such a great opportunity to not only reintegrate into my meditation practice, but also start to work back in affirmations. And I've really started to bring affirmations back into my life again and teaching them to others. So that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. And you mentioned like the breath with the yoga. So like the breath work, do you go deep into that, or is it just kind of just being conscious of the breathing that you're doing?
I really do I try to teach people how to breathe properly without the breath. There is in the Himalayan tradition, there's no meditation, or it's very difficult to meditate. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there's this word that comes up in Sutra 112 called abhyasa. And the direct translation of abhyasa means to be in the endeavor of practice, so that we're always endeavoring to do our practice. And one of the dissertations or commentaries from my teacher, Panditji Rajmani Tiganai, who did his commentary based upon one of the first sages, but they said that the real idea of abhyasa is to be in the constant awareness of partnering the mind with the breath. That is actually what abhyasa really is that we're endeavoring to merge the mind with the breath. And so one of the ideas is that the mind sometimes falls into darkness, not an evil darkness, just like confusion is another good word to translate darkness. So confusion or stupefaction. And how we start to rise the mind out of that is through breathing. So, but not just breathing, but merging mind and breath, so that the mind, is fully concentrated on how we're breathing, and then bringing the breath into a still and stable and serene flow. One of the best ways to breathe, and this is probably the way that I teach 95% of the time, 99% of the time, is sometimes what's referred to as pure breath or stable breath or one-to-one breathing, so that when you're breathing in and out, the counts are exactly even, and that there's no pauses within the breath. So the way that we breathe unconsciously, a lot of us pause, a lot of us don't take full breaths, a lot of us take maybe deep inhales but shallow exhales, or the reverse, we take shallow inhales and then we take deep exhales. So by starting to breathe in this way, just one-to-one, diaphragmatically, and then being fully aware of our breath, we start to actually change the momentum of the mind. The lower mind, that part of our mind that's so obsessed with, like, the new shoes that I have to buy, the new iPhone I must have, that part of our mind just starts to become quiet. And in that quietness, we start to feel the sense of illumination in our mind. So that in our tradition, the Himalayan tradition, is sort of the starting point in meditation. And then from there, we can start to penetrate the deeper realms.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I know you're a podcaster as well, and
Yes.
you're new enough because I see 7 episodes, but I'm very impressed.
Yes.
You're already at 2%, the top 2%, which is brilliant with only 7 episodes out. So I can see you getting very, further up the charts when you get a few more shows out. So you might let people know what are you covering in your podcast.
Well, you mentioned I only have 7 episodes. Actually, I have 6. One of them is a trailer.
I listed it as like 1.5 minutes for your stretching book. It still classes as an episode.
But actually, this was a limited series. My intention was to create like a limited series, like something that people could just sort of digest. I really am fascinated with documentary style podcasts, storytelling podcasts. So it is a storytelling podcast. Each episode focuses on a different part. In November 15th, I'm releasing the next one, which is called The Dark Side of Yoga. And it kind of deals with what kind of teachers to look for, and what kind of student should you be, what kind of teacher you should look for. And as a teacher, how, give you some tips on maybe how to be a more effective teacher. But the podcast series is all about my favorite topic, which is stop stretching. And the first podcast starts with the question, how much flexibility do I really need to have to be happy? And you find this with like so many yoga people, they're just so obsessed with perfecting that pose, and they're never happy. They're always like trying to get more and trying to get more and trying to get more. And so this is kind of like a journey that I take people on in sort of how much flexibility do you need? Why is stretching really bad for you? And what to do instead? So that's kind of the podcast in a nutshell.
Brilliant. And with the books, because what's the I know the Stop Stretching is the newer one, and the other one,
Yes.
your first book, Autobiography of a Naked Yogi. But
yes,
I like when I checked, and it's just something that I do with my guests.
of
Like the
course.
stretching one has got all 5-star ratings, and the Autobiography has 4 and 5, and even the 4-star, they're all really positive comments. It's just people just they felt like 80% is enough for you. They didn't want to give it 100%. So there is zero negativity on it, which I commend you on that. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
It might, I suppose, talk on the Naked Yogi one first. What have you covered in that book?
Well, the autobiography of a Naked Yogi is sort of my life. It's there was many stories in my life that I really wanted to put onto paper, and so what better way to do that than telling the story of your life? My autobiography is told more like in a chicken soup-esque for the soul kind of storytelling. Like there's stories about my life, but they're the lessons that I learned and the takeaways. And I always tell people, like, one of the things that I've been very blessed with in my life is my teachers, and those people who have guided me. So I actually tell a lot of stories about my teachers and the lessons that they passed on to me. And of course, it also deals with my time in New York when I started a gay men's yoga group and in New York City, and it sort of became, as Time Out New York called it, an underground sensation. Because they didn't advertise it. You sort of had to know somebody.
You did the old Fight Club kind of thing, was it?
Yeah. What goes on in yoga stays in yoga. No, I'm just kidding. There was nothing untoward. But yeah, it's really funny because the two major things that I'm all about in life is helping people become pain-free on one hand, and on the other hand, to manifest and live our life purpose. And my whole story of like going to New York literally happened in a moment of like just inspiration. Because I remember like looking at the globe going, I really want to just teach yoga, and I want to go to a city I've never lived in before. And there were many places I was thinking about: Amsterdam, Paris, London, maybe Rome, maybe LA. But all of a sudden, like New York just came into my mind, and I just felt at that moment like it was purpose knocking at my heart. And people can't wrap their head around that. It's like, New York? Really? New York? And I know, it was like, that's what I kind of thought too, like, why New York? And within a couple of months in living in New York, sort of like the pressure cooker of being there and trying to make something happen, because I moved to New York with literally $3,000 in my pocket, and I knew that I had a limited amount of funds and time to make something happen. And one day, just because of that pressure cooker, the idea for this men's yoga class came into my mind, and I started that it was about 2.5 months after moving to New York. And that just launched the rest of my life. in a way that
very
that
creative.
can't
I know you
imagine.
created something that wasn't being done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really amazing because that, that led to a lot of things. I mean, one of the things that I did was I taught in the gay out game Olympics in Denmark. I mean, it's just this kind of journey led me to all kinds of fascinating places. But one of them was meeting my business partner, who was a student in my class, and having that mutual desire to really create a place of healing for people. And so that's what led to opening up Blue Osa Yoga Retreat.
Great, interesting. I mean, you might finally just tell me about the retreat place, what you're actually doing there, and how long, what's included in the retreat area.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Blue Osa is located on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is sort of like, the North American Bali. A lot of people go to Bali or Costa Rica typically. And but there's so many yoga retreat centers here. But where I'm located, there's actually really nothing else except us. And we're located in the Corcovado National Park, or just on the outside of it, which is one of the most biodiverse, intense places in the world. It's this like little piece of land, which National Geographic said that 2% of the Earth's biodiversity exists there. We're located right on the beach, and we really cater a lot to yoga groups. So a lot of yoga teachers or meditation teachers bring people to, have retreats there. And we do our best to really kind of give, I guess, kind of like a very modern yoga experience. When I say modern, I mean the rooms are really comfortable. Some of our rooms even have air conditioning now. But we also like practice morning silence. So we tell all of our guests to
turn
shut
off
up
the air conditioning. So
but we tell all of our guests they have to practice silence in the morning and until 7:30. So people wake up, they do their thing, and they're just quiet. And there's like little rituals like that. There's some other rituals that we do that kind of sets us apart, and I believe kind of moves us more into alignment of what yoga is about and how to really give people that yogic experience. And when I say yogic experience, what I'm saying really is to give them the experience of being able to move inward into the chamber of their heart and be content in that place. And so everything that we do at Blue Osa is for that aim, so that people can rediscover or reaffirm who they are at their core.
Excellent. I remember when I was in Costa Rica, the group that I was with, they started doing mindful eating. So it was like no talking, just sitting there. And I don't think I've ever enjoyed food so well. You're just totally present in the food. You're enjoying every single mouthful, and you're doing it so slowly. And everybody felt great afterwards. And it's like, why don't we continue that on? I mean, I did plan on actually continuing it on, but yeah,
it's a great practice. Yeah. Very, very, very good practice. Yeah.
No, excellent. So listen, I'll obviously we'll include your podcast and your link to your books, but you might let them know where they'll find you.
Well, the best place to go is to go to my website, which is yogiaaron.com, YOGIAARON.com. And there's links to everything there. But they can also find my book by going to Amazon and just search for Yogi Aaron or Stop Stretching. That's, yeah, I mean, you don't have to go far on the internet to find me.
No, brilliant. Yeah, and I love the name Yogi Aaron. I mean, you're on all the different places. So no, excellent. Yes. As mentioned, I'll include both the links on the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
There is something that you can include if you would like. There's a free giveaway too, so you can include one of them in your podcast if you wish.
Yeah, of course. People. Yeah, no, yes. Definitely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me here.
No problem. So that's all for the meditation podcast. As mentioned, you'll find us on BitChute and YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. It all helps. And make sure you give Aaron a 5-star rating on his podcast as well. You know, we'll get him into the top 1% at least with a few 5-star ratings. Until next week, take care.